Oh, it's got the headphones on. Can y'all can hear me though, right? Let me leave well enough alone. Can y'all hear me okay? Probably need to put it on. Probably need to put these on. Okay. Okay. Well, good morning. Hold on, let me get my water. Put it on my little poster. Good morning, good morning. Good morning. This is your girl, Pastor Courage Molina. And we are doing our Bible reading. We push y'all back a little bit. Good morning. And let's see what we're reading. Oh, that ain't it. We're not reading 35 because we are reading 38 through 40. I know I got the boys in here. Kingston, have a seat, sir. He's so aggravating. To Thor. Come on. Come on. Come sit down. Oh, good morning. Good morning. So we're going to be reading Genesis chapter 38 through 40. Judah. We're going to start with Judah and Tamar. We started with the story of Joseph. This is day 25, the chronological Bible reading plan. If you were going to read the Bible in a year, probably take you about 15, 20 minutes of reading. I'm hot. I worked out this morning, so I'm still hot. Okay, worked out, took a shower, and it's hot, friends, hot. A little patch coming up back there. All right, chapter 38. I know I said all right, like I was about to start something, right? But I can also feel me licking my lips like LL Cool J. I don't want to be doing that the whole time. Let's see. And I'm always saying I'm going to put something in here, but then I don't. There's some type of lip oil. It's not really lip gloss, it's just lip oil. But it'll do. All right. Chapter 38. About this time, Judah left home. Judah is one of Jacob's sons. About this time, Judah left home and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hira. There he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, and he married her. When he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. He named the boy Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Onan. And when she gave birth to a third son, she named him Shelah. At the time of Shelah's birth, they were living at Kizeb. In the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son to marry a young woman named Tamar. But was a wicked man in the Lord's sight, so the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Er's brother Onan, "Go and marry Tamar, as our law requires with the brother of a man who has died. You must produce an heir for your brother." But Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But the Lord considered it evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother. So the Lord took Onan's life too. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Go back to your parents' home and remain a widow until my son Shelah is old enough to marry you." But Judah didn't really intend to do this because he was afraid Shelah would also die, like his two brothers. So Tamar went back to live in her father's home. Some years later, Judah's wife died. After the time of mourning was over, Judah and his friend Hira, the Adullamite, went up to Timnah to supervise the shearing of his sheep. Someone told Tamar, "Look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." Tamar was aware that Shelah had grown up, but no arrangements had been made for her to come and marry him. So she changed out of her widow's clothing and covered herself with a veil to disguise herself. Then she sat beside the road at the entrance to the village of Enam, which is on the road to Timnah. Judah noticed her and thought she was a prostitute since she had covered her face. So he stopped and propositioned her. "Let me have sex with you," he said, not realizing that she was his own daughter-in-law. "How much will you pay to have sex with me?" Tamar asked. "I'll send you a young goat from my flock," Judah promised. "But what will you give me to guarantee that you will send the goat?" she asked. "What kind of guarantee do you want?" he replied. She answered, "Leave me your identification seal and its cord and the walking stick you are carrying." So Judah gave them to her. Then he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. Afterwards, she went back home, took off her veil, and put on her widow's clothing as usual. Later, Judah asked his friend Hira, the Adulamite, to take the young goat to the woman and to pick up the things he had given her as his guarantee. But Hira couldn't find her, so he asked the men who lived there, "Where can I find the shrine prostitute who was sitting beside the road at the entrance to Enam?" "We never had a shrine prostitute here," they replied. So Hira returned to Judah and told him, "I couldn't find her anywhere, and the men of the village claim they've never had a shrine prostitute there." "Then let her keep the things I gave her," Judah said. "I sent the young goat as we agreed, but you couldn't find her. We'd be the laughing stock of the village if we went back again to look for her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has acted like a prostitute, and now, because of this, she's pregnant. Bring her out and let her be burned," Judah demanded. But as they were taking her out to kill her, she sent this message to her father-in-law: "The man who owns these things made me pregnant. Look closely. Whose seal and cord and walking stick are these?" Judah recognized them immediately and said, "She is more righteous than I am, because I didn't arrange for her to marry my son Shelah." And Judah never slept with Tamar again. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, it was discovered that she was carrying twins. While she was in labor, one of the babies reached out his hand. The midwife grabbed it and tied a scarlet string around the child's wrist, announcing, "This one came out first." But then he pulled back his hand, and out came his brother. "What?" the midwife exclaimed. "How did you break out first?" So he was named Perez. Then the baby with the scarlet string on his wrist was born, and he was named Zerah. This is very interesting. It's also, the placement of it is interesting as well, because before this, we're talking about Joseph and how his brothers sold him into slavery, and then how he ended up at Potiphar's house. And then we see this with Judah and Tamar. But Judah is Joseph's brother. And what we can see with this, the way it's told, the way that the story is kind of lined up and told, what we can see is like the character of Judah compared to the character of Joseph. We can see the indignant self-righteousness and hypocrisy of Judah, that he would make a promise about his son and then not do it, that he would go off and have sex with a prostitute. There would be no consequences for him. But when his daughter-in-law, it was revealed that she was pregnant, he was ready to burn her, like not exile her, but kill her by burning her alive. That is bananas to me. And then the two sons, sometimes we look at somebody's life and we think the things that they're going through must be an indicator of who they are and how they are. But really, because I'll be like, dang, she done had two husbands and both her husbands done died. Like, that's crazy. My eyebrows would go up just a little bit, right? But the first one was evil. And the second one, this is the one, and I'm not I'm not championing masturbation, but this is often the scripture that is used as proof that God is not for masturbation, which is really a misinterpretation of this particular scripture. I'm not saying that God is for it. I'm just saying using this scripture as a misinterpretation. The problem here isn't that he spilled his semen. It is that he refused to obey God. It's that he refused to do what he was supposed to do, which was make an heir for his dead brother, right? So just want to keep those things in mind. Serious questions. Did women not ovulate back then? It seems as if every time a woman had sex, they got pregnant. No, they ovulated. But like people say, like, oh, they're so fertile if they look at each other, they get pregnant. If a man looks at me, I'm pregnant, right? You ever hear women say something like that? It's just timing, God's timing. I'm glad that you asked that because nothing there isn't anything that happens that's not sifted through the hand of God. And I think that pregnancy has become, it seems, I know that there are lots of women that struggle to get pregnant, but pregnancy seems so commonplace. It seems like it's just all it takes is sex, right? It seems like that's like all it takes is sex. They just had sex and boom, everybody got pregnant. But the truth is that God brought those lives in. You know what I mean? Like it was God's timing. So they definitely ovulated, but it was God's timing, right? And it is now too. It's the same now that it's still God's timing. So, chapter 39, when Joseph. So now we go back to Joseph. When Joseph was taken. I'm sorry. Let me just stop one more time. And we can see that good things happen to bad people, right? Because Joseph might have been a brat or whatever, and so he ends up being sold into slavery, and he ends up being a servant in Potiphar's house. But it's not because he's a bad person. We can see Judah in the character of Judah and what he's doing and how he is living, and how he's not keeping his word and how he's quick to judgment, ready to kill somebody, having sex with a prostitute, which is it's the hypocrisy for me. She has prostituted herself and now she's pregnant. He didn't stop and think, well, I was with a prostitute, so let me show her some grace. Nope, he didn't. You can see that character, and you can see that he still, he gets a son from it. He still is living, free out here in these streets. Meanwhile, Joseph, who is a good person, right, who might have had some small character flaws, but based on his immaturity, really, because he was just a young kid, is a servant sold into slavery. Now he's a servant in Potiphar's house. Just a reminder that, good things happen to bad people, and bad things happen to good people sometimes. It is the way of life. Chapter 39. When Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph. Isn't that crazy? I know that sometimes we don't want to hear it, especially when we are going through something, or maybe that's just me, but I think it's a beautiful thing that it starts with, he was taken, he was sold, the Lord was with him, right? So his brothers sold him into slavery. He was purchased by Potiphar, and two things can be true, and the Lord was with him. I love that. Um, the Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man, and Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. Come and sleep with me, she demanded. But Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. She came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, come on, sleep with me. Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. When she saw that she was holding his cloak and he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. Look, Mm. When she saw that she was holding his cloak and he fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. Look, she said, my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, but he left his cloak behind with me. She kept the cloak with her until her husband came home. Then she told him her story. That Hebrew slave you've brought into our house tried to come in and fool around with me, she said, but when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me. Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. Mm. I, when we read, we think about ourselves, how we've been in situations like that the hero's been in, where people have mistreated us, where we're the ones who's blessed, and God is with us, and it's because of us that other people are blessed where we are at our job, or working with someone, or helping someone, or being a part of an organization, or whatever. And we often think like, yeah, people have mistreated me or lied on me or whatever. But I think it's so important to look at the perspective, look at yourself through the perspective of everyone involved in a particular section of scripture. So, consider yourself as Potiphar. Is it possible that you misread somebody, or you were lied to about somebody that you made a judgment about, or you made a decision about, whether it was that you weren't gonna befriend them, or you weren't gonna work with them, or you weren't gonna do whatever, they were previously good to you, and then somebody who's even closer to you might have tried to turn you against them. I wonder if there has been a time where you have misjudged somebody who worked with you or worked for you. I wonder if there was a time where, not saying you necessarily accuse someone of sexual assault, but maybe we're mostly women, so maybe you have um previously, or maybe you gave the impression that someone did something to you that they didn't do because you were embarrassed or you felt rejected. Maybe you cried victim, right? I think that it seems so extreme because she's saying that he tried to rape her, and that's such a serious thing, right? But at the root of it, foundationally speaking, what she did was she played victim. She accused him of doing something he hadn't done. She acted from her place of rejection. She couldn't get her way. I wonder how many times you have played victim. I wonder how many times you have operated from a place of rejection. You have spoken from that place. You have made a decision from that place. You have pointed a finger at someone from that place. Um, it's easy to separate ourselves and think, oh my gosh, that's such a heinous thing that she did, but I would never do anything like that. But would you ever operate from your place of rejection? Would you ever, do you know what I mean? Accuse somebody of doing something, right? Lash out. Would you ever lash out at somebody? She did it on a grand scale, but you know, I think it's difficult for us to see ourselves in all angles if every time we read the Bible, we're the hero. If every time we read the Bible, we're the victim. If every time we read the Bible, we're the protagonist, then it doesn't allow us to see ourselves as other people see us, because sometimes we're the villain in somebody's story, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And I think the more self-aware we become, that's why I always say it's not enough for us to read the Bible. You have to allow the Bible to read you. But the Bible can't read you if you always reading yourself as the hero. If you always reading yourself as the one that God is going to vindicate, if you're always using, viewing yourself as the one that God has blessed and you the one that's favored and people need to respect your blessing and your anointing, if you always see yourself that way, then when can you see that you need growth? Chapter 40. Sometime later, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, this is, you know, being able to do that or deciding, being intentional about doing that is what allows us to transform. It is what transforms us. It is the thing that transforms us. It is not staying the hero. When you stay the hero, then you are always the one that God is going to use. You're always the one that God is going to save. You're always the one that God has favored. You're always the one that's going through a season because God is working something out in you. You're always the one that God is preparing for something greater. You going through the fire. This the refiner's fire. No, sometimes you're the one that messed up. Sometimes it's your pattern. Sometimes it's your attitude. Sometimes it's your trauma and your wounds and your refusal to heal. But you won't see that. It's always, you don't have great relationships and you're not great with money and all these things. But we're not looking at where we are not in alignment, right? It's like I'm always Joseph. I'm Moses. I'm never Pharaoh. I'm always the one that's helping. I'm never the one that's prostituting myself. I'm never the one that did something that I shouldn't have done out of weakness or for entertainment or whatever, and then misjudge somebody else. I'm never the one that's self-righteous. I'm never the one transformation can't happen that way. It takes a bold level of faith. I mean, it takes bold faith to realize that sometimes I'm the villain, because when I see that, then I can allow the Lord, I can allow Holy Spirit to get in my heart and clean out the debris and clean out the spaces that keep me from being more like Christ and moving like him and living like him and loving like him. Okay, I'm going to get back to chapter 40. Sometime later, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker offended their royal master. Pharaoh became angry with these two officials, and he put them in the prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain of the guard. They remained in prison for quite some time, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, who looked after them. While they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed they both looked upset. "Why do you look so worried today?" he asked them. And they replied, "We both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean." Um, I love that he went and asked them. Like, we all in a bad place. Come on, Jesus. They're all in a bad place. They all in prison right now. They all going through something. They're all in a struggle right now, right? They're in the same storm. They might not be in the same boat, but they're in the same storm. And even while Joseph is in prison, um, complete victim, sold into slavery, did good work, falsely accused of sexual assault, now in prison, with all the things that's been going on in his life and how long he's been down there. That because the word says he was down there before they got down there, and then it says they were down there for some time. Even in that though, Joseph is like, what's going on? Still been able to look beyond his own negative and difficult circumstance to see that sometimes we can get so consumed with our own thing that we feel like, oh, it's a shame that nobody's checking on me. Well, are your eyes open to check on? Because you might be in a difficult situation, but you still have eyes. You might have gone through something, but maybe somebody, did you even take a second to notice that somebody else is not looking like they normally look, or they're not behaving like they normally behave? Maybe they're going through something. And they replied, verse 8, "We both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean." "Interpreting dreams is God's business," Joseph replied. "Go ahead and tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream first. "In my dream," he said, "I saw a grapevine in front of me. I love the confidence that Joseph had in God's ability to use him. Do you remember the last time Joseph told somebody about his dream? Do you remember what happened the first time he told somebody about his dream? They kind of gave him a hard time. The second time he told somebody about his dream, they gave him a hard time. And when they threw him in the pit, they accused him. They used his gift to insult him. Let's see what happens to the dreamer now. And even with all those things, he's still ready to use the gift that hasn't really produced the fruit. It hasn't really manifested the life that he thought, right? This dream, we know how this ends. He hasn't gotten there yet. He had a dream about where God would take him, and then he is going through hell. He's making the best of it in every space that he's in, every place that is short of the vision that God gave him for his life. He is still showing up and doing great work. Some of you have been called to greatness, but you've been called to assist, to be the blessing on somebody's house is going to come through you. But that blessing, the word says that he blessed everything that Joseph did. You in somebody's house, you ain't did nothing though. You're not using your skills and your gifts in the place where God has placed you. There was a blessing on Potiphar's house. God blessed Potiphar because of Joseph. Somebody, you've been assigned to a home, you've been assigned to a company, to an organization, to a ministry, you've been assigned to something, and because it doesn't look like the vision that God gave you for your life, you're not showing up in all that you are. You don't have any confidence in the gifts that you have. Joseph isn't saying, well, I'm not going to interpret gifts, I'm not going to interpret dreams because I'm not where God said I would be. I'm not where God has called me to be. I'm going to use what I have where I am. I ain't got time. I got something to say, but I ain't got time. Interpreting dreams is God's business. I wonder why you think you have the gifting. I wonder why you think you have the insight. You think that you have the gifting and the insight so that you can hold on to it. You think that you have the connections and the network just for yourself, and you still not where you believe that God is taking you. You're not supposed to be using it. God just gave it to you for you to hold on to it, for you to do nothing with it. When I look at this, he is using his gift in the meantime, in between time. He's using his gift in the middle, even without a position, even without a title, even without credentials, even without the degree, even without the salary, even without the notoriety, even without the platform, even without the numbers, even without the subscribers. He's still doing it. Go ahead and tell me your dreams. Verse 9. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream first. In my dream, he said, I saw a great vine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. This is what the dream means, Joseph said. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as his chief cupbearer. And please remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given the first dream such a positive interpretation, he said to Joseph, I had a dream too. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastries stacked on my head. The top basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head. This is what the dream means, Joseph told him. The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole. Then birds will come and peck away at your flesh. Pharaoh's birthday came 3 days later, and he prepared a banquet for all of his officials and staff. He summoned his chief cupbearer and chief baker to join other officials. He then restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. First of all, sounds like this word that God has is so good and is so positive. So I want to know what word God has for me. And then Joseph gives him the interpretation, even though it is absolutely horrible and negative and catastrophic, right? Me not telling you the truth isn't going to make it any less truth. And me lying to you is me sinning against God. I think sometimes we don't want to say the hard truths. And when I say we, I mean me. I'm talking about myself. Sometimes you don't want to say the hard truth, Pastor Courage. Um, but it's not my truth. It's not my doing. All things happen through the hand of God. Um, even Joseph being forgotten. Like, dang, the Lord gave him the power to interpret the dream. God gave him the power. He hadn't forgotten him. It says that God was with him, and because God was with him, you mean to tell me God couldn't have placed it on the cupbearer's mind? Of course he could have. So while the cupbearer forgot about Joseph, God did not, but somehow he still allowed him to stay in prison. Mm. We believe that if God sees us, then we are making the progress at the rate that we think we should be making progress, and we are where we want to be. But you are exactly where God has placed you, unless you're a person who's refusing to move. But I'm doing all that I can with all that I have, and still here I am. I'm not stuck, I'm stationed. Okay. I'm doing all that I can with all that I have, and still you're not moving, you're not stuck, friend, you're stationed. This is where God has stationed you. And as long as you continue to trust Him and do all that you can with all that you have, you will get your moving papers, your relocation papers in God's due time. I pray that this has absolutely blessed you. There were so many great verses here. You can go to couragemolina.org and get the free bold journal and just pick one of the verses that resonated with you. One of the things that I love to do in the very beginning of my journey in the Word is I love to look at verses. I pulled out the verses um, that really revealed the character of God, or if it said the word God, or if it was talking about God. Those were the verses that I really stuck to because I was really trying to get to know Him. I really wanted to get to know God. I felt like I had heard about him through like third parties, through pastors and other teachers and preachers and grandmas and through culture and things like that. But I realized at that time that I hadn't really gotten to know God for myself. And so when I started out reading my Bible um, every day, 2013, I really started to pull out and look at the verses. I was looking at the word of the stories to see what can I learn about God from this, because I wanted to get to know Him. And he's not just one way, right? That he's you can never know Him fully, right? So there are just so many things, and I wanted to know all the things. So maybe take some of the verses and look at the ones that specifically reveal the character of God to you, so that you can get to know God for yourself, and you can get some breaking down of the word by using the bold method. Again, I pray that this has blessed you. Go ahead and like this channel, like this video. If you like the video, share this channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know if this Bible reading is blessing you. Friday, December 16th is the last day that we will be doing Bible reading for the year. It's the last day that we will be doing Bible reading for the year. I take 3 weeks off, so I won't even be back until January 9th as far as Bible reading, but that'll give you a chance to go back through. Make sure you're connected with us on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, at Bold Faith Community Church on Facebook, at Bold Faith Church on Instagram. You can certainly connect with me on Instagram at Courage Molina. I'll still be dropping content during that time, but I will not be doing Bible reading either. So be sure to, come back and get connected to us in other ways over the holiday so you can still get your dose of courage and your bold faith up. All right. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Later.